Luxembourg, or how everyone knows it today, the richest country in the world. But it is possible that many of you wonder how it got so rich, and if you are moving there, will you become a millionaire? Let's get into the video, shall we? Luxembourg is a very small country in Western Europe with only 3 neighbors: Belgium, Germany, and France, and luckily for our midget, it has very good relations with all of them, these 3 being the main import and export partners of Luxembourg. This is the country where many big corporations like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and many more decide to open offices. Another thing really interesting about this country is that in the 1980s, its GDP per capita was around $15,000, so it became the richest country in the world in just 44 years, which is impressive, not gonna lie. Now, the first reason it became so rich is actually because of its small population and quite big GDP. Luxembourg has a GDP of around $100 billion, which is comparable to Laos and Guinea. It doesn't sound like much, but the smaller the population, the higher the GDP per capita. Obviously, it's basic math. This is why even though a country like Romania is 4 times richer than Luxembourg in GDP, its population is 29.5 times bigger, meaning that Luxembourg's GDP per capita will also be around 7 times bigger. But how did Luxembourg get this big of a GDP? I mean, it's around 3 times bigger than Iceland's. Well, the answer is actually quite simple, and it is industrial sectors like banking, metals, tourism, and many more. First, we have to go through banking because it represents around 25% of Luxembourg's GDP. It was also ranked 25th most competitive financial center in the world in the 2019 Global Financial Centers Index. Aha! Oh, sorry. I mean 16th in 2023. They are literally world leaders in financial services, like offering investment, multi-currency accounts, and offshore banking. You can also open a bank account even if you are not a citizen, so if you are lucky enough to live near the Luxembourg, Belgium, or France, or Germany, or whatever border, you can just open a bank account in this small Mr. Monopoly nation and work there. This big benefit has attracted a lot of businesses and investors, which fosters economic growth. This has also increased this country's workforce, which would have been in a really bad situation if not for this fact, as Luxembourg's population doesn't even reach 700,000 people. Next, we have to talk about resources like iron and steel. At the beginning of the 19th century, around 80% of the population was employed in agriculture, which means that like 100,000 people worked in the agriculture of a small country that barely even produced anything anyways. But this was until early 20th century when Luxembourg became one of the biggest producers of steel in the world, so the steel industry employed over 50,000 people. Sadly for Luxembourg, bigger competition started to appear in the industry sometime later, so they weren't making as much money as before. Well, at least it did boost their economic growth. Now today, between 1 and 3% of the population works in agriculture, where dairy and meat production is most done by farmers. Now let's talk about the tourism, which represents nearly 10% of the GDP and 12% of the working population. Luxembourg gets about 1 million visitors every year, which spend around 3 nights in hotels or camping sites. Also, 44% of the people that stay overnight are usually here for business. There are a lot more industries in this country, like real estate services, which we will talk about a little later, technology, telecommunications, chemicals, engineering, transportation, biotechnology, etc. Now that we know how Luxembourg became so rich, now does it worth it to move there? The pros of doing so are low taxes depending on how much you earn, which air between 0 and 42%, quite cheap gas, and it being a small, quiet, and nice place to live. But there is a big complication, and that would be the cost of living. Believe it or not, it's not cheap to live in a rich nation. A house in this midget costs a minimum of 600,000 euros and an average of millions. Utilities are also really expensive. So for the question at the beginning, if you can become a millionaire by living and working here, well, you have to already be a millionaire to live there. A better alternative is moving close to Luxembourg and work for the country, as you don't need a work permit if you live in the EU. In conclusion, this Mr. Monopoly nation became rich thanks to its services, industry, tourism, and great opportunities for corporations. Also, living there is hella expensive, and the best way to work there is if you live close to the border with Luxembourg and have to legally live in one of the 3 neighboring countries. Also, job opportunities are limited as the nation is very small. That's it with the video, and you'll see me later. Also, maybe you could like and subscribe if you love this type of content. Bye.